welcome to the stage Jan Burian, the moderator for this session.
All right, thank you, Lucian. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, or the webinar session, which is called Predict, Prevent, Optimize Real Results from Augmented Industrial Data, which is proudly sponsored by InfluxData. So thank you for joining us. At the very beginning, let me share that IoT World is running its annual survey on building IoT systems. So it takes about 6 minutes to complete, and by participating, you will help shape key industry insights. And once the report is complete, you'll receive the free access to the results. Right? So the link will be, or is already has been highlighted in the chat for our participants. So thank you for helping us to understand, your focuses and what you actually do in this in the area of AI, industrial AI. Right? So, and before we dive in, just a few quick housekeeping notes. We encourage you to submit your questions in the chat at any time. We will address them during the Q&A session at the end of this part. However, of course, if the time allows, we may pick up a few along the way. Right? So let's see. Also, you will see a poll appear during the webinar. So please take a moment to respond and hit enter. It helps us understand, where you're coming from and tailor discussions accordingly. We can discuss also the results, right? And I would also like to introduce our, let's say, participants or panelists. I would like to start with myself. My name is Jan Burian. I'm with a company called Trusk. I'm a head of Industrial Insights, together with Helena, if you would like to introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jan. Yeah, my name is Helena Jochberger. I'm the global industry lead for manufacturing at CGI. We are Canadian founded and funded company, but worldwide active meanwhile, and I take care of everything that is connected to manufacturing. Pleased to meet you.
All right, thank you. Now, Ben, please.
Yes, thanks, Jan. So hi to everyone who's attending. My name's Ben Corbett. I'm a solutions engineer at InfluxData. So I work specifically with our European, Middle East and African customers to figure out if InfluxDB is going to be a good fit for their use case. So for those of you that aren't aware, InfluxDB is a time series database that kind of handles any data with a timestamp. So it's becoming more and more used for IoT platforms and things like that. I've been at Influx for about 4 years now, and before that used to develop IoT platforms for about 5 to 6 years, and before that I was a mechanical engineer. So yeah, working in manufacturing facilities myself, so I've had kind of a natural growing into the tech space. Very happy to be here.
Great, thank you. And Ahmed?
Thanks. My name is Omid. I'm software engineering by heart. More than 20 years of experience in software industry with big companies, Siemens, Schneider Electric, and currently with Bosch. I'm responsible to build and scale up the industrial data and industrial AI platform, and also technology advisor with AI company called Atelic at the moment. Happy to meet you and happy to share the insights today. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks a lot. And obviously we have a great portion of experience and especially the hands-on experience, which is very important for our further discussion. And now let's set the stage a little bit, right? So I would like to just stress that industrial organizations are increasingly looking for smarter ways to get more value out of the data, but most companies actually struggle to make sense of the story that complex data is trying to tell. So as IoT systems generate enormous volumes of information from, say, pumps, controllers, sensors, but without context from MES, SCADA historians, or ERP systems, the insights remain fragmented and incomplete. Right? So we all know this, how hard it is. To read or get a value also, but also to read the story of the data. Right? So that actually leads to missed opportunities, poor decision making, and challenges in justifying ROI from data investments. So That's where augmented industrial data comes in, blending the real-time series data with historical, contextual, metadata layers. And this augmentation actually unlocks powerful new capabilities, right? Could be detecting hidden patterns in rotating equipment, optimizing load balancing across distributed assets, and many other, say, situations, right? So crucially, this can often be achieved without, and this could often be, this is also an interesting point, right, which I would like to make, but this can often be achieved without major changes to existing OT stacks. This is super interesting, super important, right? So as the boundaries between IT and OT continue to blur, industrial data management is becoming the foundation of every smart manufacturing initiative. So the opportunity is clear. Organizations that learn to harness augmented data efficiently or effectively are seeing measurable gains in performance, uptime, and decision-making. So we are fortunate today to have a panel of experts who will share real-world examples of how augmented data is driving impact on the shop floor and across the operations. Right. So with that, we can kick it off with the very first question, right? And this one goes to Ben, and the question is, what does augmented industrial data mean in a context of AI-driven manufacturing? Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Jan, and feel free for the other panelists to jump in if I miss anything here. But yeah, it's a term that's popping up more and more. I see it kind of every day now, and simply put, it means raw machine or process data that's enriched with additional context information to make it more useful for analytics, AI, decision making. So raw data being things like sensor output, PLC output, SCADA tags, signals, MES logs, temperatures, pressures, RPMs, voltages, things like that, things you would plot on a graph. And the augmented data, the additional context data, could be things such as equipment IDs, production lines, batch numbers, manufacturing IDs, derived values, KPIs, moving averages, things like this. And of course, like annotations from operators, failure identification. We see it as a bit of a differentiator and something that's really, really important, because the context-rich data allows us to explain not just what happened, but under what conditions and with what outcome. So, in manufacturing facilities, there's a really complex network of adjacent processes and sometimes overlapping as well. And more context gives you more clues to work with to identify patterns. So that's kind of why we see it being critical in order to get kind of AI ready.
Okay, great. I mean, great insights, Helena. Would you add something to that? I mean, Ben got it. I mean, quite extensively. So, is there anything left?
Very good definition. Maybe to add and maybe to have a recap from where we come from. I think it's also important to mention that throughout the last 10 years, so augmented industrial data is only possible now because of the convergence of faster networks, of the IoT devices, of the edge AI. So 10 years ago, the data was still siloed and the compute was also too expensive. Now, fast forward 10 years, we can really capture this machine data across the entire plants and analyze it really instantly at the edge. And of course, contextualize it with the enterprise systems. But this is where I think it gets also tricky, because this data continuity and this seamless data transfer is not everywhere possible. And of course, when we're talking about manufacturing, we have both the discrete angle and we have the process industry. So we are quite heterogeneous. And I would say the transformation pace is not the same. And then plus on top, and this is I would say a macro trend aspect that I would love to throw into the game, we are all affected by the macro trends at the moment, world economic shifts, economical downsides. And that means in a lot of cases that the transformation pace is slowing a bit down on the one hand side, and the other hand side, AI fires it up to continue. So this is a bit the contradictory position we are all in.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Amit, would like to?
Yes, sure. I mean, that's not a new question. I mean, this is a question in the industry we are asking for a very long time. And each time there's a hype or new technology in the industry, like big data we had, I remember IoT, I remember cloud, and many more, we are answering the question again to ourselves. But I think AI is a little bit a bigger shift in terms of technology, because we always talk about interoperability for industry between IT and OT for the last couple of 20 years. And we always wanted to make it better. And to answer the question, it's all about interoperability for data between IT and OT world. And AI will play a very enormous role here, because then you have a much faster, let's say, deployment and implementation of connecting systems together. If you look at AI, it's not only about augmented industrial data, which is very important, but also agents. AI agents will play a very big role here. You could have in the future like multi-agents talking to each other. And that really makes a big shift in the architecture and also interoperability. But also interoperability is not only about data, it's also about the silos we built in the organizations and companies. And AI, in my opinion, will change a lot of things in the future. And this time, I think the hype would be much faster than the other hypes and trends we had in the past, because we are not only going to break the silos with the data inside the technology, but also in the organizations to build more trust as well. Does it?
Okay, maybe also I'll add my 2 cents or my experience. At the beginning of my job career, I used to work as a head of quality control and management in automotive company. The company was producing some big parts for the trucks and buses, and they were like a big presses. Right? So when each press or every press, they had their own, let's say, SCADA system, and there was some it was also producing some data related to the production. Right? But we never used this data, coming from the press, right? Because if there was some a quality incident or something we had to, let's say, analyze, it was impossible to understand the data coming. There were some curves and values, but we were not able to address it to the badge, or maybe to the badge, yes, but not to the particular part or to the person or whatever, right? So it was so complicated that it was useless for us, even if some kind of a capability was in place or some data was in place there, right? Which I believe is changing or has changed now, right? Because as you mentioned, I also mentioned that IT, OT blurred. I can also see that the machines are smarter, right? Of course, it's a different situation if you talk about the legacy factories, legacy production lines, and the greenfield production lines, greenfield factories, right? With all the modern systems, with the edge computing already inside, connected to the cloud, and etc. This is really, those are really the enablers, and of course AI and some advanced data analytics. Okay, so yeah, any reaction to that, or are we going to jump to another question? All right, so good. Let's jump to another one, because we have really, also for the audience, we prepared a nice set of the questions that are really, let's say, graduating, going under the surface. So let me build on that. So can you share some examples where AI models trained on augmented time series data improved on performance of traditional threshold-based monitoring? So something which really is shifting the traditional approach. So Helena, you have something to share with us?
Absolutely. Yeah, thresholds, as the name already says it, are static and reactive by design. So, for example, if you have a pump that trips only when the vibration exceeds a set limit, but then the failure is already imminent. Yeah, so you react, and this traditional thresholding only reacts when a problem has already crossed this critical point. And that really leaves little or no time for a corrective action. So in reality, this often means that operators are forced into really costly emergency responses instead of reliability-based or preventive maintenance actions. And when we compare that thresholds, that static and reactive, towards the AI and augmented data, it's really possible to find the hidden and the combined patterns. So that means by correlating this multiple data streams, the AI uncovers the weak signals that would be missed in total isolation. And this creates really an early warning radar for industrial assets. So for example, the models can detect combination of micro vibrations, temperature rise, lubrication data that signals days before the failure. So I would say the advantage of this is really that instead of a single alarm, then the system learns the signature of degradation and alerts the teams while they still have time to schedule the maintenance. And this is really from a reaction to a foresight. So from firefighting, just putting out the fires when they occur, to a concrete foresight. And I think for the industry applications, there are several examples. I mean, automotive industry, Jan, you just mentioned it, detecting torque irregularities in robotics before assembly line stoppage. So even the small torque fluctuation can cascade into misalignments and that whole production. But AI then can flag these patterns very early, preventing that the line shuts down and saving costs of lost output, which is, of course, as we all know, especially in the automotive industry, quite critical. Or another example, food and beverage. So if you put sensors, contextual data to catch the quality drifts in bottling before an entire batch is wasted, I think that does not only prevent, for example, financial loss, but it also supports the ESG sustainability goals, by reducing scrap, rework, and unnecessary
CO2 as well, right? The energy consumption, it's all together,
all connected. So that means that, coming back to your initial question, the thresholds tell you when you're already in trouble. But the augmented AI tells you trouble is coming while there's still something to do about it.
All right, agreed. Ben, Omid, like to expand on this?
I would say, I mean, there are so many examples, as I mentioned, with AI agents. They're just going to make a big shift here in this industry, especially in OT, and OT didn't get touched for a very long time. There's the example is like already like covered for the last years with mainly use cases around the condition monitoring, anomaly detection, and predictive maintenance, and the rest is like this makes a huge competitiveness and results for industries. And we already implementing, and we already see the big impact of AI, and especially AI agents in this area. For example, at the moment we're working on some new platform with AI agents which are able to interact with each other in the OT. Like, let's say, for example, with machines, we talk about machine to machine interactions and communications, or robot to robot. And this is a really big shift, because without AI we already implemented a lot of time of implementation, but this is really boosting our experience of making those agents in the field and also in the OT. And of course, it's always question of trust and convincing people about the new technology and trust it, and also making it super reliable and super secure for the future. But examples are really unlimited at the moment. I mean, the question is like, how do you bring these examples to the field and convince people to use it, which comes later, I think.
I mean,
I was just going to jump in. Nothing massive to add. I just recall always staring at a graph and showing it to all of my customers, which was how reducing the time to actionable insights helps with maintenance costs. And, for a very long time, we focused on having the right data in the right place to make it so threshold-based monitoring systems could kick in. And now with AI-driven solutions, as Helena mentioned, foresight, we've actually got kind of a negative time to insights in the fact that we can predict the future. And I think shifting costs into that predictive or preventative space sometimes is seen as a little bit of a luxury, but I think that's kind of like a false fallacy. We need to shift costs into that preventative space because that is where it will save us the most in the long run. There's also use cases that traditional threshold-based monitoring systems would never have been able to tackle. Identifying patterns across different areas of the site. You wouldn't believe some of the insights that are generated through these systems, and things you never would have picked up just through raw data capture and threshold-based systems. So the difference is stark. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe one additional word also to what Omid said, and I would like to underline that as well, because I strongly also come from the processes inside OT, and it's so amazing across really the core value chain. What kind of use cases become possible with that augmented AI? Might it be in the R&D, in the engineering to cut down the time to market for the product development, for example, or even in the supply chain, which is so vulnerable, right, to have that supply chain transparency and such. So I think the possibilities are endless. Now we need to discover them and move away from the hype to more generating the real value.
Yeah, I mean, you said in a great way. My personal experience, I mean, as I said, like a former quality guy, I actually raised on thresholds, right? So, or green and red, whatever. But now I see, I mean, during the last maybe 10 years, that when the AI actually started to, there was like IoT platforms before, right? And built on machine, and there are some solutions based on machine learning, especially, Helena, you put it greatly when it comes to, for example, the food and bev, right? The bottle filling lines. That's very classical use case of how to leverage this augmented time series data. I had today the conversation with the person coming from petrochemical industry, and he was showcasing the digital twin, which was underlined by this sensor data being, let's say, processed with the AI, or with the help of AI, to identify those, let's say, hidden patterns, right? Because this is really like a super complicated production. If it's like a chemical reaction, it's just, you need to understand what's in it. Also, you need to understand what's going on in equipment. So this is exactly the I'll say the case for augmented data, right? And leveraging AI. Okay, let's jump to another question. So, can you share other ways that, I mean, we've already discussed that, right? So, are there any other ways, I mean, where the augmented data has been used to deliver value to the organization? I mean, we talk about like a production, anything else, like just very maybe briefly, like I already mentioned something maybe related to engineering, R&D. I mean, I bet that's quality, maintenance, maybe also the classic cases. Do you have any other areas to mention?
I can walk through a specific example that I encountered a few weeks ago, which piqued my interest as well. So, after the ability to augment the raw data with additional context information, basically gives us a more complete and usable digital representation of our environment, more clues. So therefore we can work on that. We can basically feed AI systems. I come from, I actually probably give slightly different expertise on the panel. I come from more of the connectivity and database space. We see ourselves as an AI enabler, so we kind of can underpin where all of the clever stuff is done. So I work a lot with connecting up customers, getting the data in the right place, and we are close to the value. But one specific example when I went to go see a customer was that they actually had an issue with material getting stuck in the mold. And when the material was stuck in the mold, it caused a cascade of issues which stopped production. And they said it didn't happen very often. I mean, we've probably all heard stuff like this before, but when it did, it was critical. It stopped down the plant for at least a day, and it required manual intervention to perform super reactive maintenance. So once we instrumented appropriately and were able to add in the contextual information, and by that I mean batch numbers, recipe numbers, ambient environment data from specific areas around the plant, and through that and working on I guess investigating that data for a period of time, they basically understood the combination of conditions, overlapping conditions that led to that material getting stuck in the mold. It was all around viscosity and temperatures and things like that. The output, that was actually a chocolate factory, so we can all agree that's super critical in terms of the output. But yeah, that was one that it was actually quite simple for us to hook up. And, you know, they moved, just as Helena and Omid said, moving more towards a preventative, like foresight-based analysis rather than reactive, with literally an engineer going in there and looking at thresholds and popping out the material from the mold.
Yeah. I think thanks for framing that. Great example. Maybe I would like to jump to another one, and I mean, because we are discussing the topic from many angles, right? So this one goes to Omid, right? Because I know that this is really area of his expertise. What does a successful implementation look like when manufacturers integrate AI-driven insights from augmented data while maintaining their existing operational technology stack, right? So, and what measurable outcomes should leaders expect?
I mean, that's a little bit difficult question, because I would immediately ask you, like, how do you measure the successful? What does the successful means? But what is very, very important at the moment, I mean, in this market with AI, especially after the hype is coming in the last couple of maybe 2 or 3 years, especially last year, when you talk about the successful implementation, I can observe, because I also working with other companies and manufacturers and kind of consulting them sometimes. It's about the successful implementation with the pilots. I mean, I really don't see few of them like coming out of the pilot phase. And for me, the successful is really minimum, like how do you get out of this AI pilots to the production, scale it up, and bring some real ROI in a very competitive way. So this is how I phrase it in a successful way, like other colleagues said, Helena and Ben said, with the predictive maintenance, with preventive maintenance. I see a lot of companies already fascinated about AI and the buzz. And there are like different departments in silos making a lot of AI pilots. But I mean, if you look at the report in the couple of few days from MIT, like 95% of the AI pilots are getting failed in the companies. Yeah. And in industry is even getting worse, because then you have to convince the people in OT with the very critical production and machines to use the pilot. It's not really the software industry. It's an industry with a very sensitive process and expensive failures. And I mean, to just answer your question, I mean, for me, a successful implementation is an implementation which doesn't only end up in a lab, like a prototype. It must go to the production. It must be trusted and used by the operators. Then bring real results in terms of ROI, and not only ROI that you see often in the management presentations with nice charts and numbers and KPIs, but something that makes the companies competitive with in this global market, with everywhere, with China and other continents. And then you could call it like a successful pilot or successful AI project. Does it make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Helena or Ben would like to expand on this. Complex answer.
Wonderful statement, because I think the scaling beyond the pilots and having this enterprise impact across, really becoming a data-driven enterprise from A to Z, right? I think this is what really counts. And I think the real breakthrough is not just technical accuracy, that's one point, but it's really prove the ROI and embed it consistently across the shop floor, across the site, and then even across plants. We have one methodology at CGI that we call the manufacturing atlas, and that is also a quite holistic framework that regards people, processes, technology, and data to really come out of that, let me put it that way, pilot purgatory, as Dante Alighieri called it, and really move to an enterprise-wide thing. The only downside that we are facing right now is really the economical situation that we are facing in Europe and in other parts of the world, because I have the impression with all the manufacturers I talk to, they want to transform, but sometimes they have to keep their lights on at the moment, and then they concentrate on just one transformational aspect and they stop the rest.
Okay, so I mean, my take here would be, I mean, I'm not sure if really I understand the outputs from the surveys are saying this kind of story, like 90-95% pilots fail, right? So from my personal experience, when I talk to the manufacturers and engineers, I'll say the number is probably lower, right? But where the companies are really like failing is that, I mean, to have the data in place at the first as a very first step, right? So to have now we talk about like a data products, right? So something like a set of the data which might be, let's say, used for some or provided, to the people creating these solutions or leveraging those, let's say, AI-powered tools for contextualizing data and transforming the data into the outputs or into the insights, right? So this is what I see. I mean, different formats. I mean, different kind of technology, different standards, very poor, like guardrails and everything, right? So the companies probably need to establish this at the very first place, and then they can build on it, right? And of course, at the time, it's really, I mean, everything is super fast these days, right? So, I mean, I think that in 2 months is gonna be like a 2 years anniversary when Gen AI just like popped up, right? So, and prior to that, I mean, with the companies or business, they didn't have a clue that some technology like this could even be helpful, right? So in to optimize their processes and to have most of the processes and bring some value. So even today, if you have some strategy, it's probably going to be different in maybe 2 years, right? So and everyone wants to react quickly on every new trend, every new feature. So, and this is also not helping, right? So at least every company should have some kind of like at least like a plans or like a plan or like a standards before they start with those, let's say, like projects, and before they really try to pilot, because for each pilot there should be some strategy how to scale. If the strategy is missing, if it's really like, oh, let's try it, okay, brings a value, doesn't bring a value, that's it. And of course they gonna stuck in this purgatory for, let's say, for most of the situations.
I'm partially agree with what you say, but it's a difference in perspective on success for different companies. Of course, for some of the companies, as you said, only to have the prototype and show a demo and nice results is really like enough, that they don't call it fail, they say it's successful. But for others, or in my opinion, I think successful means you have some results, because as a matter of fact, the company is not like a university or research institute. They invest some money into these pilots and projects, and they want to use it really in the production to get the ROI. And if they are getting behind that and not getting successful, the competitor is overtaking. So currently the market is super competitive, and the others, really take over. I mean, look at what is going on. For example, the latest example with DeepSeek in China. So if you are not getting successful with your investment and with your new technology, you are not competitive anymore. So for me, is a successful doesn't mean you have a demo from the lab or a prototype. Successful means how do you compete with your global market at the end.
Yeah, well phrased. Maybe let's move to the but we already touched that a little bit. Let's talk about the barriers, right? So Ben, what are your, I mean, from your perspective, working across multiple manufacturing clients, what are the most common barriers preventing organizations from implementing AI-powered predictive operations?
It's a big question. I'll do a poor job of gathering all the barriers. So, aside from everything we've just mentioned, absolutely resonate with everything Omid and Helena just mentioned. So, getting something that isn't seen as just a gimmick, something that's trusted and proven, particularly by the OT realm, is really important. Convincing, identifying pain and quantifying opportunity is a key thing. We're never going to be able to convince people to invest in something that isn't just maybe a marketing ploy unless there's actual pain to solve. But I mean, that's not technology barriers. If I was to go into technology barriers that we see, a bit of a bottleneck I see specifically from my snail's eye view of the world, my small area, is legacy systems. Omid, you mentioned interoperability before, so we often see there's a bit of a shift of people moving away from kind of closed proprietary walled garden systems, just based on them becoming a little bit of a bottleneck to development agility. So difficult to work with, difficult to extend or integrate with modern systems. So sometimes they can create a bit of a vendor lock-in situation, which hampers development, but also they're not based on open or industry formats that your analysts, data engineers, or data scientists are used to working with. So you need to have your data accessible using these industry standard open formats that can give you a little bit of a future-proof and flexible setup that lets your analysts and all of your team use the best-in-class tools that they prefer in the ecosystem of their choosing. So that's something that we preach quite a lot. Getting data in the right place using open and standard formats rather than kind of these walled gardens that are difficult to work with. But I'll pass it over to the group because I know that's only skimmed the surface of a lot of the barriers.
Maybe just to continue or build on what you said, Ben, I personally come from the aerospace industry, aerospace defense, and there we talk about complex systems and not about products, right? Because the things there have a very long life cycle, and that is the beauty of it, because you have a lifespan in the aerospace industry of 20 plus years, 25 plus years. Everything has been changed over this life cycle. And this is, in my humble opinion, the perfect example also to demonstrate the data, and also to talk about, visualizing the digital twins or digital triplets. Because in aerospace, unless you don't have your material management data correct, unless you have your technical data correct, unless you have done your logistics support analysis to support such a system over a very long time span, is it operable? How to keep it maintainable, supportable? What about the supply chain and all of these big philosophical questions? You won't end up working in a proper ecosystem. If you don't have your data clear, you get no license to operate. As simple as that. I wish that the other industries were a little bit the same, so that we could copy and paste that. And this is why I proclaim so much also the ASD standards. Now, if we have our systems life cycle in order, a digital twin, or we call it meanwhile in CGI digital triplet, if you pop on the AI component and the scenario planning on top, in its best case is something that is as planned, as built, and as maintained. And only then, with that systems interoperability that Omid was talking about, and this data, continuous data flow, only then we have a holistic end-to-end view of things. So that would be my 50 cents, but I give over to Omid, and curious to see what he had to say.
I think you already covered everything and nailed it down. I mean, I have nothing more to add. I think it's really the topic is already covered. And of course, I mean, as Helena and Ben already mentioned in the answer, the silos. I think I would summarize the answer into the silos in technical systems with data, different systems, tons of tools, and no connection. But also organizational silos is really something which needs to be broken to have better, let's say, results and competitiveness for the topic. And I think if you ask me, AI is helping that. Yes, AI is going to help that, facilitate that, and also bring more transparency and clarity. But there are more work to do beside the AI.
All right, good point. Maybe let's jump into the ROI discussion a little bit, right? Because I mean, I'm always saying that from a technical perspective, I'm almost like everything is possible, right? So, but it's about a matter of not just like the output, but about the value and the cost, right? So, how should manufacturing leaders approach the ROI calculation for AI and augmented data initiatives when they're already investing heavily in traditional monitoring and maintenance systems, right? So, I mean, what should be the business case here? Maybe Omid, if you would like to start with that.
Yeah, I also briefly mentioned that before, and colleagues also made a lot of good answers, especially Helena, on that. ROI for me is not really nice numbers and KPIs that is getting presented in a very nice business way and presentations. It's at the end all about competitiveness in the global market. The competition currently, especially in Europe, is really high, and also there are strong players in the market currently in China and other continents, and we are not alone. So if we want to measure the ROI, we have to consider competitiveness at the beginning and see like how this is how this is getting changed by us at the end with AI or whatever projects which is there. And we mentioned like AI pilot is really good. Sometimes it's so, let's say, inspired by technology. The people are really fascinated about the hype and technology. Let's do something with technology. But at the end, it might also bring some nice results. But for me, is something with ROI is the competition, like competitiveness in the global market is the key. And also the mindset. I mean, something which is not really discussed is about the manpower. That's a huge topic and challenge especially in Europe. And I think the systems and AI solutions which are being implemented to facilitate this manpower challenge, and also the cost of the production, like energy and other things, is impacting a lot. And I think AI can provide a lot of solution and improvements to the topic. And also maybe I would mention some other topics like downtime and waste. I mean, if we little bit change of this, like facilitate that with AI, I think the impact is really high for different industries. Yeah, that's it on my side. Maybe you add something.
I mean, from my experience, I mean, a lot of companies, they have some like I would say threshold or the framework, some like maybe one or maximum 1.5 year target for ROI, right? So for the investment, so it's sometimes it's quite hard to justify the complex investment into the data preparation and everything, right? Because it takes time and it's probably might be costly from some perspective. Helena, Ben, I mean, this is like a very, I would say, important question, right? Because I mean, for many managers, like ROI is still, I mean, whatever we are going to say here, I mean, for many, this is still like one of the key parameter to track or to follow, right? So
absolutely, and I think we're living times where the playing time is over. So between 2010 and 2020, we had this playfulness around, we experimented along in POCs and whatnot, MVPs, and then eventually stopped. But now it's really, can you show me an ROI within the next 10 to 12 months? Then we do it. If not, we drop it. So that's, I think, there has been taken place a consolidation due to the economical phase. But I would also highlight what Omid touched upon a couple of minutes ago when he was talking about organizational challenges. And you said it as well, Jan, we have the IT and the OT convergence. That's fine. What we still do not have to a very mature point is the IT and the business alignment, and more so the integration. Yep. And that means exactly about accountability. Who is accountable for the ROI definition and measurement? Is it IT, or is it also in conjunction with the business? And if we are still working in such a siloed organization where eventually the one party is not talking to the other, or the one understands A and the other understands B, then of course the output might not be the desired one.
Yeah, I mean, just to add one thing or a couple of things to that, the ROI calculation is something we do regularly when we check in with customers after so many years. It's a difficult calculation, and as Helena just mentioned, it's the people who are often doing the work that have the pain to solve don't have all of the information about the benefit necessarily, and vice versa. So it's a whole role, basically a whole job to be able to dig into that effectively and properly quantify it. Because if you don't do it properly, anyone can build a case around to justify a particular set of numbers, but you need to go into and span all of the different organizational aspects to be able to see what the ROI is. One key thing that comes up for us regularly, which is quite interesting, is that a lot of the time the work that you go through to digitally transform to enable these kind of use cases and platforms, let's say if you have one thin thread of a use case, whether it's anomaly detection or whatever it is, getting the data accessible, removing the silos, getting it normalized with appropriate metadata and contextual data in the right place. We check in a year's time or 2 years' time on that specific use case. Sure, we can do an ROI calculation. What customers always say is that through doing the hard work and doing the legwork to enable this AI or whatever use case it is, they now can tackle so many more use cases that were never before possible. So the ROI calculation kind of becomes a little bit exponential as long as you go through and do it properly and you get out of POC or pilot purgatory, as we've coined it. So yeah, that's one thing that's quite nice to see for customers, but I will not try and oversimplify or underestimate how complicated the ROI calculation can be and how important it is. Yeah.
Something I could add very briefly to that is, like, in most of the cases, there is something that is getting ignored by people about the ROI.
Yeah, 100%.
Is something very interesting. If you touch critical manufacturing process, like we know a lot of them. I'm working with them. If you want to add a ROI for a process, for example, process automation system for a factory which has a very, let's say, big production, I mean, it's very, very important. If you have something to add to ROI, it should run on top of the thing and not really change the thing. That's something I hear so often from my customers and friends in this industry. Because you have to imagine, if you want to implement the AI solution for a factory and getting 1 hour of downtime or a mistake or any problem in production, that's sometimes 10 times bigger than the whole AI project.
Yep.
And nobody's going to accept it. So this is at the end part of the ROI, and you end up with a -10 ROI at the end of the project, and nobody is going to accept this. So for me, successful ROI, again, is something with end-to-end design and not a department result. So it's like you have to consider this end-to-end, and you have to also measure the ROI in the global competition. And how do you improve not only the results or show something, but how do you improve the competitiveness at the end, hopefully without breaking anything in the production. I mean, that's very important factor at the end. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, what I've been hearing, I mean, especially in the I would say like a super big organizations, enterprises. Right? So I mean, there are some like infrastructure related projects, right? So I mean, going to the, let's say, like data storages and this kind of projects, and then there are, let's say, like a business related projects, right? So, and especially, I mean, infrastructure thing, that's mostly on a IT side or enterprise IT side when it comes to some kind of like a business related solutions. And when I say business, I mean also the use cases for example, production, quality maintenance, and so on. Then often we are having those discussions with the, let's say, the process owners or KPIs owners, right? So when they are actually paying for those projects, right? So they need to see that immediate value and immediate impact into their KPIs. Right? So that's also happening quite often, let's say. All right, so I mean, we have maybe space for or room for one more question. So let's close maybe with a big picture takeaway, and then we move to the Q&A part, right? So for each of you, if you had to pick one thing that separates organizations getting real value from augmented industrial data versus versus those still struggling, what would it be? I mean, I can start with Helena.
Yeah, maybe going back to what we discussed already, it's for sure scaling beyond pilots. The cross-functional buy-in is essential. We also talked about that.
Sure.
And I would say, so the difference isn't the algorithm. It's really the ambition. Yeah. So I would say the winners or the competitive ones scale the impact across the enterprise, and the strugglers stay stuck in the pilot angle. So that would it be. And it's for sure not only the data collection, but connected, contextualized, actionable data.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something very similar, much less eloquently. But yeah, we see. I mean, just saying from my own experience, we regularly talk, I would say, from the bottom up. So we're talking to real people on the shop floor that have real pain to solve, sometimes great ideas, and they have a great way to go about it. But it's the phrase you used, Helena, which I really liked, is the cross-functional buy-in. So the initiatives and the projects that we see that are more successful don't just have a kind of bottom-up work process, but it's top-down buy-in as well, right? So being able to get the buy-in from decision makers and also areas of the organization which will be responsible for potentially doing the work, but then some other organization gets the benefit. So it is the cross-functional buy-in and customers that can have that kind of top-down strategic initiative that I see being more successful, because otherwise, as you say, the pilot never gets past purgatory and it kind of dies a death. Really
and
well
maybe to that, and that resonates quite nicely. All of us have been touched with the design thinking methodology, and we usually use it for prototyping. But it's equally nice to use it in the cross-functional collaboration. So thinking about who's the user, where's the problem, and work in diverse teams. That would be it, I'd say.
Yeah. So I don't have much to add on what Helena and Ben said. It's already like covering the whole thing. But for me, the short answer as differentiator for companies is really mindset. This word, very important. So why it's important, the mindset? Because then you have a very, let's say, result-oriented mindset in the companies as part of the DNA for management, to go through the technology in a right way, and not really only like having pilots. You have to move from pilot to production, because if you are not doing this, you definitely a competitor will do this, and then you are behind the competition. So this is really important. We don't do all of this just for having fun with AI or just doing something with the trends or hype. You have to be competitor in the market, and then the only answer is the mindset. So it's very, very important to move from fast pilots and demos and labs and all these innovation playgrounds to production. And in order to go to production, I think those organizations and companies are successful who are building trust and transparency. So trust, especially in OT, with the guys in the production, who not really have the feeling that AI is going to replace you, but AI is going to help the companies and the production to deal with the lack of engineers and operators and manpower, especially in Europe, and helping them to do the jobs easier. And also those are the very successful, as Ben said, who are integrating technology in the right way into the systems, and not really building another silo. So I see like recently companies building another silos with AI, like AI silo now, which is absolutely not really helping. It's better than doing nothing. I mean, it's worse than doing nothing. So it's like, don't build another silo called AI and AI prototypes. It's very important to change the mindset and being competitive at the end. Yes.
All right, thank you. Makes sense. I would maybe add maybe the same thing in other words, right? So learning culture, because I mean, the companies which are able to, let's say, adapt fast and also fail fast, right? So that's I mean, it's not a cliche. This is really, I mean, the way how to benefit from some solutions, maybe even from the very early stage of when it's on the market, right? Not waiting for the others when it's all, let's say, tested, and when the others are using it already, that's too late, right? So the organizations also need to have such a processes and such a culture and spirits and strategies how to let's say decide which way to go. I mean, where to focus, and exactly going from the pilot to the scalable industrial solutions. I mean, this is probably the only way. All right. So with that, maybe we have 4 minutes to life, right? So let's jump maybe to we have quite a lot of questions, or at least like 10, if I see it correctly. So let's maybe take a look on the very first one. So what proven methods or tools have you seen that help manufacturers? Okay. All right. So we already have a poll here. So you can briefly submit the poll. And again, right, I mean, a quick one. What proven methods or tools have you seen that helps manufacturers move from simple visualization augmented data to actually driving predictive and preventive actions on the plant floor? So any particular methods? I mean, approaches. I mean, I would say it's quite a detailed question for let's say 2 minutes, but maybe you can build upon your solutions or tools companies are providing. Helena?
Well, I talked initially about our manufacturing atlas, but this is quite congruent also with the ISA 95 that all of the engineers following this call here know. It's a framework that's actual since 30 years in the place. And I would say it's important, as Omid also touched upon, that we have a holistic perception. So it's the people, it's the processes, it's the data, and it's the technology. And I think it's of utmost importance not to concentrate only about the tech. It's to concentrate about the business problem in the respective value chain process that we have, and then also see who are the impacted people from that business problem. And once we have answered to that question, then we of course can select the tool set. I mean, tools are there like sand corns on a beach, right? It's the question to select the right one that is suitable for your business problem and then implement it. And it's always the case like, is it future-proof? What about the obsolescence and so forth? And I think that applies to all the technologies out there.
All right, great. Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, what tools and processes we can use to be successful. I would say one thing I always encourage customers to do is follow success stories and case studies as well. Don't just follow products. InfluxDB is a component in a wider tech stack. We're often a build solution, so it's not as simple as just customers coming and looking at individual components. So focus on the problem that you have to solve, and recommendations and case studies and proven projects that have got beyond the pilot purgatory, right? That would be something that you can move forward with.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you for all the great questions, engagements in the chat. Of course, big thank you to our panelists, Helena, Ben, and Omid, for sharing insights and your experiences today. So with that, on behalf of InfluxData, IoT World, and our panel, thank you again for joining us.